assimilations and are then. So as it says there, whenever we have these sounds in contact, okay, remember that there's a possibility that one sound is going to influence the other, okay? Because there is this influence, sometimes there could be cases of allophones, okay, so we call it allophonic variation, or in other cases, the influence, as it says, is so strong that there is a complete change, a drastic change, okay? And so it's not only at the level of allophones, but at the level of phonemes. So there is a change of phoneme. Or in some other cases, like for example, we have seen in lost cause and so on, then one of the elements in the sequence disappears and we have elision. In the case of the allophonic influence, this coarticulatory contact, coarticulatory means that two sounds that have different articulations come in contact, then the process is called similitude, then, okay? And if the effect involves change in the phonemes, the name that we give that is not similitude because they don't become similar. That will be the case of allophones, but there is a change, a complete change, and we call this phonemic assimilation. What phonemic? Well, to establish a difference with allophones, because in the other cases, well, you just selected one member of the family or the phoneme, that is the allophone, and you replaced it. But in this case, you don't replace just an allophone, you replace the complete phoneme. Okay. Other aspects of connected speech that we're going to see later on, for example, are elision. In that case, that is, okay, the omission of sounds. Linking, maybe you're familiar with at this stage what linking is. That is to join two words, then, especially if they end up in a consonant sound and a vowel sound, we tend to produce them together. Contractions are the same, weak forms and juncture. Let's move on to now the concept of phonemic assimilation. So what is phonemic assimilation? I'm going to cite Roach, who is a phonologist, and he says assimilation is something which varies in extent according to the speaking rate and style. Let me explain this quotation. That is, it varies in terms of the speaking rate. It means that we have to produce it when we speak very quickly. And style, it means that sometimes the style is not so careful, not so slow, and so on there. I go on with the quotation. So it is more likely to be found, we're talking about assimilation, in rapid, casual speech, and less likely in slow, careful speech. Okay, end of quote. There could also be assimilation between vowels, but the one that we're going to study, of course, and thank goodness, because there are too many possibilities, is consonant assimilation. Okay, let's imagine that that example is in between. In between is an example of assimilation, because remember, similitude, that is allophones, means that there's one sound that is followed by another sound, and this sound was, let's say that it was too different then, okay, from this one, and though, so it has to choose one element that makes it similar. Whereas in a assimilation, okay, what is going to happen is something totally drastic. So if I have this first sound that is followed by this sound, which is a little different, I'm going to change you and you will become like me. And so we have a new process that is called assimilation. Like in between, that's a case of assimilation. One sound assimilated the other. When we talk about these cases, we have to pay attention to features or characteristics. For example, the direction of the process, that is, which sound influences which other. And there are like different directions. This is direction going here, there, and so on. Different directions. For example, we can have something that is called anticipatory or regressive, okay, assimilation. Regressive is the one that happens in between, for example, or the example here, 10 people, in which the second sound, in this case, the bilabial, influences the previous sound, in this case, the alveolar. So making it different and changing some of its features. So the in 10 is replaced by the which is very similar, okay, in terms of the point of articulation to p, because both of them are bilabial. This is the most typical case, okay? But the direction could be also coalescent. It sounds like a very strange word, but don't you worry. It's just you will get used to producing coalescent, coalescent, coalescent. Why? And this happens when the two sounds, the t and the y, disappear because there is a new sound. Okay, and that sound, so another way to say this more technically is that the alveolus, the plosive alveolar and the semivowel, okay, coalesce into the affricate ch. Okay, I usually give remember that I like metaphors. Then I like to use metaphors, and so coalescent is like a marriage. Okay, people get married. Two people get married, and then if they coalesce, we're going to have a baby, and that baby has characteristics of one of the parent and the other parent. Okay, so that is the idea with coalescent. And finally, we have, the progressive assimilation, which is rare, less frequent, okay? And that happens when it is, the first sound that has an influence on the second sound. These cases are generally historical. What does it mean historical? We're going to see later on. But we have an example here in which the word water in the past was pronounced water or water. And the which is a bilabial, or labiobilar sound, then influenced the R sound in wa, like the spelling wa, and it influenced that vowel, changing the lip position. And so wa became war. So in this case, it is the first sound that influences the second and not the other way around, like in regressive. So this is a possible case, as you can see, the three directions. Regressive, the second sound influences the first. Coalescent, the two sounds disappear and we have a new sound. And the last one, which is progressive, the first sound influences the second in this way. Good. Then it says there, it is worth noticing that the sounds which are most likely to be influenced and to some extent replaced by the final assimilated sounds are the alveolar phonemes. This is what I told you, okay? The alveolar sounds are weak sounds then, okay? And so they tend to assimilate, then tend to be replaced, they tend to be elided, they disappear, and so on, then, okay? Good. So let's move on to now the next, part of the unit. Another category that we pay attention to is not where the influential goes from the first to the second to the first, or both of them, but it is the time when the assimilation took place. And by that we have two cases. One is the historical assimilation, and this is something that you will try to understand and say, what is that? Because we haven't lived through the history of the English language. We are just learning the English language. And these processes have occurred a long time ago. Okay, so for example, these historical assimilations can already be found in the dictionary with the pronunciation that they have now. And how do we know that this is historical? Because that pronunciation is different from the spelling, from the letters. So let me give you here one example. In the word mansion, that is pronounced mansion, we have a letter S and a letter I. This word was probably pronounced because we have the S and the I with the alveolar fricative sound and the palatal sound as mansion. Okay, mansion. But people little by little started to, speak this very quickly and very quickly and very quickly, and this changed into mansion. So this is a case of coalescent assimilation, historical, because people replace this anya by a sh sound. And this is historical because it has already happened. There is no person nowadays in England says mansion. Okay. Yeah, well, then contextual case, I'm sorry, I'm just to say that these historical cases are generally word internal processes. That is, you're going to find them in only one word. Okay? Contextual cases are cases that are produced every time that we use the English language. Okay? They these cases do not appear in dictionaries. Why not? Because they are related to word boundary cases, that is with two words. And so we don't generally find two words then in the dictionary. We just find one word, remember. But whenever we speak, because of the pressures of speaking, okay, because of the fast way of speaking and so on, we produce changes to these words then, okay? Especially to the sounds that are in contact. That is the last sound of one word, the initial sound of the other word then. These cases are called contextual cases, okay? The cases that we have seen today, like, for example, in bed, meet you, and so on, are contextual cases because they are the product of this pressure because we're speaking very fast then. Okay, good.